Dear AWE Nite Istanbul attendees, I would like to welcome you all to the very first AWE Nite Istanbul event. I will be your host today. My name is Ali Hantal. I am the testbed coordinator at OpenAir Cloud and the founder and CEO of XR Masters. I currently live in Houston, Texas, and have been living in the US for almost 25 years. However, I'm originally from Istanbul, and I feel very honored to be able to co-organize this first AWE event taking place in Turkey. I actually was with the founder and CEO of AWE, Ori Inbar, during last year's in-person event in November at Santa Clara, and we decided that it would be a great idea to organize an all-night in Istanbul before the next in-person AWE event. Actually, looking at the calendar, it's just 3 weeks out right now, and fortunately, we're able to do that. I am sure Ori would like to say a few things before we move on, so I would like to invite Ori Inbar, CEO and founder of AWE and Super Ventures. Please bring your hands together for Ori Inbar for his welcoming remarks.
Hey, everybody. Thank you, Ali, and thank you all for joining us here on AWE.live. I'm super excited to welcome the Turkish community into the On-Night network. You're joining a global community that started with the first AR meetup back in New York City in 2009, and now has grown to become a global community that runs on a regular basis in almost 30 cities around the world with a mission to help advance AR, bring it to the masses, bring it to the mainstream, and do it in a way that actually benefits society. All these meetups can now be found right here on AWE Live. For example, this afternoon, On-Night San Francisco is taking place, and you'll be able to see every week there's a few meetups that are taking place. So it's a great place to just see what's going on. And the best part is that you can also connect here with thousands of AR and VR professionals from around the world. You can connect with them, chat, even video calls, find the people that kind of match your interests. And it's a great network to kind of join this global community of XR professionals. Of course, I can't wait to hear about the innovations that are coming out of Turkey. So we'll definitely follow this meetup in the upcoming weeks and the months. And of course, I hope to be able to attend in person one of the meetups in Istanbul sometime soon. Turkish food is my favorite in the world, so gotta be there and try that. And of course, we can't wait to meet in person in one of the big AWE events. The US event is coming up in California in just a couple of weeks. It's going to be the 13th year, and it's probably the best event we've ever had, with 250 exhibitors, 400 speakers, and thousands of XR professionals from around the world that I'm sure will be a very inspiring event. In October, we'll actually meet with the European community in Lisbon. So maybe it's a bit easier for some of you in Turkey to go there. Now, the meetup today is really a very special meetup for me. The topic is really important. And I want to give you a little bit of a background. How did the concept of the AR cloud emerge? Well, in the summer of 2017, with the introduction of Apple's AR Kit, Google's AR Core, and Snap World lenses becoming a hit, I feel like the golden age of AR started. And at Super Ventures, the fund that I started with Tom Emmerich and Matt Meisniks, we're seeing hundreds of pitches from AR and VR companies, and we recognized a common theme among AR startups. They were trying to take AR to the next level. At that time, SLAM was becoming pretty robust on smartphones, but it felt like this wasn't enough to bring it to the mainstream. AR experiences still felt very lonely, if you will. And just like any massive internet success story, it needed to support collaboration and sharing among many users. And a bunch of startups were actually trying to make AR persistent at the time. So as we were analyzing some of the key players, the interesting pitches we were hearing, we came up with a definition of what it would take for AR to break through. And we named the concept simply the AR cloud. The concept wasn't completely new. In some ways, it was built on what MMOs were doing for years at that time. The idea of providing persistent and shareable content that many users can access in real time and collaborate on. So on the day that Apple officially launched the ARKit, I still remember that day, September 19, 2017, I published that post that was celebrating the ARKit launch, which was, I think, a very important milestone in AR, but also cautioned that it won't be enough to bring it to the mainstream. And that post found a very fertile ground and went viral among startups and investors alike. The big concern, though, was that we could still see a lot of walled gardens emerge with the AR cloud, and wanted to find a way to avoid that. So how do you remove the friction and really drive massive adoption? For this concept to really take off, it required small and big players to collaborate on common standards so the AR cloud can serve much larger communities. And that was the inception of the Open AR Cloud and other organizations that embarked on a mission to drive consensus and break the barriers between the isolated AR maps and experiences that we were seeing evolve. So today, we're still in the midst of this battle, but I'm really encouraged by the work that we're seeing in the community by organizations like the AR Cloud, the Khronos group, and I'm really happy to see these efforts being promoted today in events like this all-night meetup. So with that said, can't wait to join the discussion later on. Back to you, Ali.
Thank you, Ori. And Jetta, can we have the slides up, please, so that we can actually talk about a little bit about the all-nights. And I would like to provide brief information about why all-nights are here. We are actually right now organizing Istanbul, but as you can see, there are 28 other cities that all-nights are being organized. And yeah, if you can go to the next slide, please. Yeah, next one. Yes, and we have right now, being one of the 28 cities, one of them is now in Istanbul. We actually are trying to embody the awe spirit in communities across the world all year round. And I would like to talk about the in-person AWE 2022 on the next slide. Yeah, as you can see, 3 weeks out, that will be June 1 to 3rd, we will have AWE in Santa Clara, and anybody who is with us here as AWE Nite Istanbul community can actually use the code that you can see on the screen for a 20% discount. So please take a note of that. And there is also China in August, and as Ori mentioned, in October, which is closer to us, there will be Europe. And yeah, I was in Istanbul last month, and I had the privilege to meet with XR startups, IT editors, journalists, government agencies, and educators. There actually, too, the metaverse has been very strong, and everyone, unfortunately, those who really do not know much about the concept, too, has been talking about what metaverse is and what it is not. In Turkey, I believe not much different than most of the world, an average person thinks that there is only a VR, virtual reality-based metaverse. However, as we all know, and as Ori explained, there is one that is called a real world metaverse or spatial web, which happens right on the real world, where the digital world meets with the virtual one. And we call that now AR cloud, as I said, spatial web, or real world metaverse. And today we will be talking about the importance of standards for building an open and interoperable real world metaverse. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our distinguished panelists to you. We have Dr. Nadine Alameh, is as the CEO of the Open Geospatial Consortium. We have Neil Trevett. He is the Vice President of Developer Ecosystems at NVIDIA and the elected president of Khronos Group. Then we have Jan-Erik Vinje, the Managing Director of the Open AR Cloud Association, and he's also the co-founder of On-Site Viewer. And of course, we have Ori Inbar. Welcome again, dear distinguished guests. And with the old web, as we all know, there were standards such as HTML and URL, and it was one of the most interoperable systems ever, that any one person from his or her garage was able to create an HTML page and reach out to the world and really become global. And that was the power of openness and interoperability. However, we also experienced the mobile app era, where we did not have standards and where we had to create two different apps for two different app stores. In other words, there were walled gardens as opposed to being open and interoperable. We are now facing the same issue, as Ori very well explained, of having more than one, actually maybe in this case a lot more than two metaverses, more like multiverses. I would like to now ask each of our panelists to tell us about what they see as the biggest risk of having these walled gardens instead of metaverse, having these multiverses. Let me ask to Nadine first. Nadine, what would you tell us as what would you see as the biggest risk?
So thank you, first of all. Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
So thank you, first of all, for inviting me to be here. Maybe a little thing about what I do so that you know where I'm coming from. I run the Open Geospatial Consortium, and it's a consortium of, it's a global consortium of more than 550 organizations, many of whom you know from government, industry, and academia. And we are the geospatial experts of the world. And if you don't know what geospatial is, location, right? And location connects everything. It connects where the cars are in relation to the road network, connects the resources to the disaster areas, it connects anything to climate, the satellites, the Internet of Things, the sensors, so seriously everything. And hence, by extension, I like what you said, from the real world, it also will connect everything in the metaverse, because you still need to know where things are in relation to each other. And so that's our expertise. And I appreciate the focus on standards and open standards. So we offer standards for 3D, for augmented reality markup language, for tiling, streaming the tiling, so we can talk more about that. But more importantly, you know, I appreciate being here with Khronos and with the AR Cloud, because we're already partners in the real world and now in the metaverse on making sure that it's open. So anybody can plug into it, anybody can contribute to it, anybody can benefit from it. So I think that's what we're trying to contribute. The question in terms of a challenge, I think our challenge is, honestly, and I appreciate this event and everything that you're doing, is to get ahead of this explosion of the omniverse, metaverse, call it whatever you want, by making sure the right parties, in this case, the standards organizations, the people with the best practices, the commitment to openness, to get together and ensure we're building, extending the real world, building the metaverse based on open principles, and also based on the things that we have demonstrated work in the real world. So you take the data, the digital twins, the data about the Earth, you know, from space to underground, all of this. The challenge is, do not reinvent the wheel, and I think that's why we're here. Hope that helps.
Thank you very much, Nadine. Actually, let me then ask first to Neil and Jan-Erik as well to introduce themselves. So Neil, that would be great if you can introduce yourself and talk about Khronos Group. That would be great.
Sure. Yep. Hey everyone, I'm really happy to be here. So yeah, I'm Neil. My day job is at NVIDIA, but I'm here representing the Khronos Group. The Khronos Group is another standards organization. We're not quite as big as Open Geospatial Consortium. We're about 200 companies, but we've been going for around 20 years now. Every standards organization has its own speciality and its own area of focus. As Nadine was saying, OGC is location. And for Khronos, it's low-level APIs for hardware acceleration. So we have 3D APIs like WebGL, OpenGL, and the new generation Vulkan. We have open standards for reaching into XR hardware, typically HMDs, which is the Open XR standard. And we have file formats and asset formats to feed those APIs. And the most popular one and the most relevant one for the metaverse, I think, is GLTF, which is a 3D asset format.
Yeah, thank you very much. And Jan-Erik?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, and a big thank to the Turkish audience for showing up for this event. I'm really hoping soon I will come to Turkey and visit with Ali and other people. My day job is an on-site viewer, and that's cool, but the most important thing in my life, except for my family, is my volunteer work as the managing director of the Open Air Cloud Association. Now that Ori is here, there was this little story where I was working on AR stuff, and I discovered the article that Uri had published, and I was looking for other people who were maybe thinking about standards. And I reached out to Uri on LinkedIn, and then he put me in contact with Christine Perret, and Christine Perret put me in contact with Scott Simmons of the Open Geospatial Consortium. And it started snowballing, and way back in 2018, some of us met at AWE in Santa Clara, and we decided from there that we should set up this organization to work together in the industry with professionals, with startups, with standards development organizations, see if we can work together on arriving at interoperability that is so much needed for this new area of technology. So you want me to address some of those challenges that we see? Yeah. So you mentioned the web as really the success story of standards and interoperability. Nothing in the world, except for money, up until then, had been as interoperable and as scalable. Just works everywhere, and that was a huge benefit for the entire civilization, for the economy, for our culture. It hasn't been like an entirely perfect story. We have our challenges with our digital lives today. That's certainly true. But what we're sort of, I see sort of these three zones, these three paths, and I think now we're in this purgatory or swamp in the middle, and we might get stuck there for a little while if we don't get our act together. And in that sort of middle ground, we know we can do better, but we're still sort of the subjects of the large tech companies' platform wars. They are trying to build their own platforms, and obviously the investments, they are bringing great technology advancements that everyone will benefit from in one way or another. But we have to have these we have to operate on the terms of the big companies within the limits of their business models. And that is very, very different from the open web, where there are no such constraints. It's just the law of the land that will constrain you, not what is profitable for this company or that company. And we are limited in our freedom to choose. We cannot, if we want to choose everything, then it's a big cost. We have to implement for all the different platforms. And if we don't have the resources, we reach a very limited audience. And if I'm an end user, if my friend or somebody else in my family is using a different platform, we can't have the same experiences, we cannot share the same things. And all of those things are very much worse than what we can do. But it can be even worse. So we can move towards, if we don't do anything about it, we can slide into this sort of dystopian digital prison kind of thing we never would like to have, where you have a very small set of large company having way too much influence, because this technology is so invasive. What we should aim for is to put together the standards and protocols and the collaborations and the infrastructure that moves us towards what I call the digital renaissance, where everyone will benefit, everyone will be able to pursue a prosperous future that this technology can allow if we do the right thing. So I'm really excited about the Khronos group and the OGC and IEEE and W3C and many other standard organizations starting to care about this. That's a very promising sign. That's sort of the way out of this purgatory that we're in.
And as you're saying, Jan-Erik, if we think about the web, how interoperable it was, we really don't want to see creators and developers trying to do what they did for one type of work. Instead of doing one page, for instance, an HTML page, they have to create their work several times, and for every and each platform, which will actually not be very good in the long term, because they'll be locked into one big metaverse. And with that said, I would like to turn to Neil. And Neil, I would like to ask you, what do you think the first set of standards should be adopted? What would you like to see as the first set of standards adopted widely in the market?
Yeah, that's a good question. And actually, before I go to there, just want to echo and amplify what Jan-Erik and Nadine and Ori have been saying about the challenge to ensure that the metaverse is open and democratized. I totally agree with everything that's been said. And the way to make sure that the metaverse is open is to try to emulate what the web achieved, Web 2.0, and all based on open standards, no central gatekeeper. It is really interesting, though, to think back in history when the first internet was being developed. It was basically legislated to be open. The DARPA funding from the U.S. government, which was the originator of many of the technologies we still use today. The whole point was to make it open. There's no legislative authority saying the metaverse has to be open, so it's up to us. We have to DIY our openness this time around in this generation of the web. And I think I'm really happy to see all the standards organizations here today, because I think a lot of the responsibility to ensure the metaverse is open rests on the shoulders of the standards organizations. We need to make sure that the standards organizations have the right standards at the right time. But this is what Jan-Erik was just saying. If we're too late, then proprietary technologies will be invented, by necessity, because people have to ship products, and that could be a slippery slope, and we really need to avoid that. But timing is everything, because as Nadine and Jan-Erik know, it's also possible to try and standardize things too quickly. If a technology is not yet ready, it's still being in R&D, it's still being researched, it can be way too early to standardize, and that can lead to failed standards and a loss of confidence in standardization. So I call it like the Goldilocks effect. We have to work hard to be not too late and not too early. We have to be just right at the right timing. Timing is often the key to success for standards, and a lot is going to hinge on the standards organizations having the right timing as we build out this metaverse. But to come back to your actual question, what is going to be most important? I mean, in some ways, I think that the metaverse is not going to evolve from someone, at least I hope it's not going to evolve from someone dictating a top level plan. I don't see that happening too much, which is good. Someone saying, okay, you've got to do this and this and this, because that's centralized control. I think the metaverse is going to bubble up from the bottom up. It's going to be a very Darwinian process. So the real answer to your question is the market will decide which standards get adopted and used first. But my personal view, and that is a very Khronos-centric view. We work in the 3D and XR space, so I think that we do see clear opportunities for 3D APIs, for open standards for accessing AR and VR hardware, and the asset formats. I think that those are certainly three. They're certainly not the only three, but those are maybe the three that Khronos can help contribute to. The 3D asset formats like GLTF, they've grown up so far being what I call a 3D asset format, which is the visual appearance, the geometry, the textures, materials, and animations. GLTF is now being upgraded to be a metaverse asset, and not just a 3D asset, and that's adding things like attributes and behaviors. So you can bring it into a world within the metaverse, and it knows how to be used within, for example, a physical simulation or other runtime characteristics of the world that you're in, and that's happening right now.
Very important, actually, that 3D asset standard. That's really great work at Khronos Group you guys are doing. And Ori, what would you like to see as the standards in the short term to be adopted?
So, instead of talking about the actual standards, which I'll leave to the experts on the panel, I just want to highlight two aspects of why it's so important for the AR cloud or the real world metaverse, take your pick, must be open. And it's the 3D geospatial maps on one hand and the AR experiences on the other hand. Creating the 3D maps all over the world is a massive worldwide effort. And I think a lot of us agree that it would require some form of crowdsourcing, which means, when I use my smartphone or glasses at some point and I walk around, I want to be able to map that environment. And the only way to enable full coverage of the world, or at least, close to full coverage, is by removing those barriers. So it doesn't matter what platform, what app I'm using, the map should grow and should be and I should be able to contribute my data, my information to that global crowd. Of course, we have to keep privacy in mind and make sure it's anonymous and so on. And then the second part is sharing experiences on those maps. As a creator, when I create an AR experience in a certain location, the only way for me to make it available to everyone in that location is if it can traverse across different platforms, different apps. And these two things, whether I want to kind of just build a this global 3D map or want to be able to share my experiences are, for me, kind of the two of the main reasons to make sure it's open.
Yeah, actually, that's a very good one, to be able to transfer your assets from one, verse to the other one. Yeah, and how about you, Jan-Erik? What would you think the first set of standards? What would you like to see adopted?
OpenAir Cloud does actually have sort of our own little blueprint, a prototype of the future open spatial web. We call that the open spatial computing platform. And the three things that the platform does is first, the location part. You have something we call GeoPose that we're actually working with the Open Geospatial Consortium. So that is what will bind your AR experience to the world. That is how you can use AR cloud technology like visual positioning. We see those things are being announced now by large companies like Google and Niantic in these days. That technology, and also technology of smaller startups for visual positioning, that's like number one. You connect the digital and the real world together using GeoPose. The second thing is the map that Ori spoke about. That can be both. We can talk about point clouds, but it can also be more semantic and structured, so that you know what is there, that this is a car and this is a house, and we're exploring ways we can encode, like we call it reality modeling language, but it's just a concept at this point. We're looking for ways to describe the real world in different ways digitally, so it's a machine readable world. So that's number two. And then thirdly, the experience side of it, that you can, everywhere you go, you can imagine that the world is now have been digitally upgraded. You live in a different kind of world. It's the physical world. We have evolved to experience and collaborate and be together, but now there's this digital thing everywhere. It's like a canvas or a scaffolding where you can summon any kind of experience from the metaverse or the spatial web. So that could be relevant content, it could be applications, it could be all kinds of things. There's no limit. It could be a future building, it could be an old building. But there needs to be some sort of standards around how you can discover those things to bring those experiences up into your AR solution. And for that, we have prototyped a spatial discovery system. So you have spatial content discovery. And one of the things interesting with we have Khronos group here, one of the types of contents you can experience is GLTF data, GLTF 3D objects that have been anchored to the real world at a specific GeoPose. So you can bring it up and you can see the 3D object as part of the real world, and everyone else can have that same experience as if the object was actually there. So those three things are very fundamental to the real world metaverse of the future. We have the working prototypes running at city scales in places like Bari, and it's coming to Norway. It's growing in Turkey. There are at least 2 cities and a university campus in Turkey that will have this platform up and running.
Yeah, and that was really a very good part that actually the mayor of Ankara is supporting this for the city of Ankara as well. After Bari, Helsinki, and Los Angeles, Ankara and Istanbul are now becoming test beds. So Nadine, what was your take on that?
Thank you. So my laptop is dying. So if I disappear, I'm sorry, because I'm like in a conference, but take everything that we have. I like, Ori, you said map the environment. Take our location standards, our 3D standards, our data models for city GML, for underground, for indoor markup language, the semantic stuff, for water ML, take the APIs to get the location, take the AR ML, take the GeoPose, take the 3D tiles. I mean, just start with all of these, build on what we have, and then tell us what we're missing so that we can work together. And I mean here, and I appreciate the mention of W3C and IEEE. So take it all. And again, I'm sorry if I disappear. I'm trying to keep this internet alive.
Nadine, actually, if you are having problems, if you would like to, let me give you the word for your remarks before you have to go, if you have to go. So if the laptop dies, what would you like to add? And then we can continue.
I would like to add and emphasize open metaverse. That's why we're all here. Take the standards that we have. Nobody can do it all. We have to be connected, and it's not then the standards, it's the communities, it's us on the screen and everybody behind our organizations. And let's do it, and let's do it. I appreciate while respecting privacy, ethical use of the information, responsible use of location, and please tell us what we're missing so that we can build it together. Open, open, open.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you very much for that. And Nadine and Jan-Erik, since Nadine can go, I would like to ask you both about, let me start with Jan-Erik. There is the GeoPost Standards Working Group that was formed by OGC and OpenAir Cloud. And can you please talk about that shortly, Jan-Erik, and then, or Nadine, about, let me start with Jan-Erik. What does that GeoPost Standards Working Group do by, and a little bit of history of that?
Yeah, if we can take a little bit of history. The idea for a universal GeoPost dropped into my mind in 2017. And that year, Google had announced their visual positioning system at some major tech conference. And Uri talked about the AR clouds, and I really saw there should be some universal way to express geopose, the geospatial position and orientation of any object. So you could have a 3D object that is virtual, like digital, but you can have real objects like a person or a smartphone or a car or a robot. Those things can also have a geopost in the real world. And I had noticed as a developer that people were expressing stuff like position and orientation in all kinds of ways. And that created a lot of frustration and friction for integrating systems. So it was like a big, it sucked, to use that word, like Elon Musk would have said it. And it would be much better experience to have an agreed upon way to encode that. So I think it was exactly 2 years after the announcement from Google about their visual positioning system, a draft charter for a GeoPost standard working group was submitted to OGC, and a few months later, that standards working group started operating. So, and I was privileged to become a co-chair together with Christine Perret and Jeremy Morley on that, and we worked for quite some time, and now that standard is under vote. There's a draft standard being voted on within OGC. So I'm crossing my fingers that we will have a positive outcome of that vote, and it will have the next step towards becoming an official standard.
Yeah, which is what actually Ori also mentioned about having to be able to get those assets from one to the other, and that GeoPost for everyone in the Turkish XR community, like Jan-Erik explained, GeoPost is going to help any creator, any asset owner of that placed one asset on any real world metaverse to be able to actually take that asset and publish it on another real world metaverse. Of course, there can be now ideas about how this would be done on the economic side, but we can definitely talk about this as the telecommunication companies giving each other right to do roaming. So the economy part of this can be handled at the level where these platforms are communicating back and forth, but the geopose, the geographic location of an asset on any metaverse, if that can be standardized, then one asset can be very easily placed on another metaverse without the need of spending the same type of effort. And if we do have any questions on any of these, please put them on chat. We will have a question Q&A session at the end, and we would be glad to help our experts these questions. Who would you like to take this next question on, or actually maybe elaborate more about what else would be a great benefit for these standards? What would you just tell to a beginner who does not understand much about all these technology? Who would like to take and tell us how they can understand this better, and just to take the word out to their friends and to their work, their network in their environment? What would the other benefit be, do you think? Who would like to take this? Anyone?
I can jump in. I think this is a golden opportunity for anyone to do something very interesting and that can benefit your local community or your local business. The interesting thing is about a real world metaverse is that it is decentralized by nature. Like the data is most valuable at its location. So it actually corresponds with a decentralized architecture. It is more technically optimal to spread the infrastructure around and have local control. So you can have local service providers and local app developers, local content creators creating for a local audience. So it sort of flips the old, very centralizing old web on its head. And now everyone has a greater opportunity to have an impact with their creations, with their new business ideas, with improving their local community. So I really, really hope that that will sort of be the outcome. That is, in my mind, sort of at the essence of the digital renaissance.
Yeah, I'd like to amplify that. I mean, one of the really interesting things is often overlooked about one of the benefits of open standards. It does reduce the barriers to entry for smaller companies and even individuals to participate and create meaningful innovation and value. You don't have to get past the gatekeeper if everything is open and accessible. So that's one of the really awesome things about making sure things are based on open standards. And I'd like to give a shout out to Jan-Erik and Nadine and Geopose. Khronos is thrilled that Geopose exists, so we're going to be integrating it and using it in the standards that we do, OpenXR, GLTF. Every time we need to transmit or access geospatial location, we're going to be totally using the Geopose standard. So we're glad to help build the momentum behind Geopose. And I think that's actually it's an interesting example of the larger trend that I think we all see happening, is that the metaverse is forcing so many technologies to come together and to be interoperable. We're going to need way more interoperability standards than the previous generation of the web needed. And so it's not just the individual standards organizations doing good work. We're all going to have to learn to cooperate even more than we have done in the past. And I think everyone is willing and able to do that. And it's great to see the different standards organizations leveraging each other's work.
Well said, Neil. I mean, Ali, just to kind of address your question on the another benefit, I think the biggest benefit of the open, real world metaverse or the metaverse I think, Tim Sweeney, CEO of Epic Games, said it best. It's, if we collaborate, if we work together, we create a bigger pie, and then each one will benefit more from that. The companies, the creators, the users, of course. So that for me is kind of the number one reason to do this. And, we've seen it in every industry in the past, 200 years, starting with railroads and electricity, even videotapes. Once the standards were established and people knew that they can rely on the standard, these industries exploded and became huge, kind of driving forces in the world economics. So for me, that's the number one reason.
Yeah, open standards are really the only way to make technology, once it's proven, to make it pervasively accessible. All kinds of examples in history how the right standard at the right time really enabled tremendous innovation and growth.
And Neil, as you were saying, making smaller companies and entrepreneurs go to the world, it will be a lot easier if we can have that openness and interoperability. Like, think about the old web. If we were to upload our web page back in the day to every single ISP, like American Online, my website, and then go to Turkish Online and go to German or whatever ISP, and we would only then be globally reaching out to everyone. That would be very inefficient, and actually I'm not even sure if we could be anywhere close where the internet is today, and brought us so many great benefits by being this open and interoperable. So I think having this talk is very important, especially at a country like Turkey. There are so many entrepreneurs, and they're trying to become global, and they want to reach out. And but they all asked me when I was in Turkey, mostly parents, they were asking me, what can they do personally? What can they do to help the world, to make it a better one for the next generations to come? And I really wanted to bring all of these amazing organizations in front of them, and to tell them that what they can do is, like, they can become volunteers, first of all, for these great organizations, or they can, if they're developers, they can talk to them about how they can help being open, how they can help open source. Like there's one other initiative going in OpenAI Cloud, is an open source visual positioning service. So an open source VPS. We definitely there need a lot of developers and universities, educators to come and help us to make a VPS, which will break the chain and make everybody available, make everybody same distance to the metaverse, to the real world metaverse, as it is to the internet. We're not under one internet service provider. So that is also very important. And anybody who would like to really help, please go become members to these organizations. And if you can donate, that also would be a great help to any of the nonprofit organizations that we're mentioning here, and not only those who are represented here. As we were discussing, there's others, IEEE and W3C, and basically Jan-Erik just pasted the auroraviewer.org, which is another initiative that is going on in a testbed in Europe, in OpenAI Cloud. So please check those links that has been uploaded on the chat. Now, I would like to come back and ask another question to, I will start with you, Neil. There are so many small nonprofit organizations, large organizations, and large players that are working on the same issue, but there might be some overlapping that these organizations might be working on the same issues, same problems. How do you think the work of these standards development organizations and supporter organizations and players can be coordinated better? Or can they be coordinated better?
I think they really need to, and I am hopeful that we will be able to do that. I think you're absolutely correct. There's duplicated work. There are gaps because everyone is assuming someone else is doing it, but something has dropped through the cracks. There's competing standards if we're not careful. So we do need this extra level of coordination and cooperation between the standards organizations. I think the metaverse, its success will depend on having that new level. We haven't had, I mean, lots of the standards organizations, we do have very good cooperative one-on-one relationships. But a lot of people come to Khronos saying, okay, you've convinced us the metaverse needs to be based on open standards. But where do we go for the big picture? And really, right now there isn't anywhere. An interested company has to go to a dozen or more standards organizations and figure it out who's working with who. It's quite a complex landscape. But the good news, we don't have anything to announce yet, but we've been working with Jan-Erik and Nadine and many of the other standards organizations when we're trying to put together a forum where we can bring all of the standards organizations to talk to each other and make it an open forum, so the companies that are interested in those standards can come to and feed the requirements and understand what's happening, and just help that this larger coordination really moves the needle on real world. I think it was already said earlier, things have to really work in practice, not just on paper. So actually testing stuff out is really important. So I'm hopeful in the fairly near future, we will be able to, all the standards organizations will be able to announce that we've managed to get that cooperation underway in a well-organized fashion. So watch this space.
That would be an amazing benefit that the world needs, if that type of organization. I'm glad to hear that it's in the works. And Jan-Erik, or would you like to add? What do you think that can be done to make this all work and cooperate better?
Well, first, these kind of events, where we bring together people, the experts, different organizations, and talk through it. That's the first step, and it has probably the biggest impact. And then, it's I think a big part of the success relies on the passion that people in this industry have for bringing this technology to the masses. We believe in it. We think it's really going to change the world and for the better. So once you have this passion, everything else becomes much easier. So we just need to keep being persistent on this, keep pushing it, not accepting no for answers, and eventually we'll get there.
AWE is the soul of the AR community. So so shout out to you, Ori. I mean, it's where the community, the industry and the community comes together. We couldn't survive and do all this without you.
Yeah, and we're only a few days away I think all of us are going to go there, right? All of us right now, we're meeting there. So very much looking forward to that. And that personal connection, I think that is going to be needed for what I believe is the biggest challenge of coordinating interoperability in the history of mankind, because never before has there been a technology which has so many different aspects that needs to work together. So this is a challenge of a lifetime for anyone who wants to sort of take it. Like, where were you when we went to the moon? That was the previous generation. What did you do? Now for this generation, where were you when the metaverse or the real world metaverse was designed and built? Did you have a problem? Can you brag about it to your grandchildren, like in 50 years? But I was there, I was a part of it, I contributed, I wrote open source, I tested things, I I created art, I did stuff, I made it happen, I was part of it. And you can be, everyone, and I really hope the Turkish community can join in on this.
Yeah, great point, because I think they're not only going to ask you where we were if we are not successful at making it open and interoperable. I think they will ask us why we didn't do what we should have done, you know, because there is a window of opportunity right now. I mean, can you go back in the mobile app industry and talk about this right now? Isn't it too late? I mean, that's not going to be happening right now. So I am also inviting everyone who's watching us today to really get involved more. All parents that have been asking me questions about what the world is going to be looking like for their kids and grandchildren, our grandchildren, really these are very important topics that we should continue talking about. And they should, if they have questions, ask us, ask these great organizations, become, again, I keep saying, become members. Please support all of these non-for-profit organizations so that this can be a better world for the generations to come. So we are coming to the end of our time. I would like to ask all of our great panelists here to give us their final remarks. And before doing that, anybody who's watching us, I don't see much questions, so let's get your fingers on the keyboard. Maybe you can just tell us where you are joining from, which city, so that maybe you can be a little warm on asking questions. Please type in where you're joining us from. And now coming back to our panelists, again, final remarks. Let's start with Neil.
Well, I totally love what you've just been saying. For all of these standards organizations, participation is the lifeblood. If we don't get participation, then we're not connected to the real world. And you know, at Khronos, we tried to put everything as much as we can out on the open web. All of the specs are in open source. So you know, if you're using one of our standards and you find issues or you have suggestions on what's missing and what you would like, how you would like the standard to evolve, you know, just dive in there on GitHub and you know, let us know. We absolutely read all the comments and we respond as much as we can to the needs of the community. Yeah, so participation is awesome, and it's exactly as you say, it's a bi-directional opportunity. The people that get involved, you know, can really make a difference.
Great. Ori, final remarks?
Yeah, I mean, just to reinforce what Neil just said, you know, it's all about the community. You know, that's what drives everything. It drives the technology. It drives how we use it, and you know, and the benefits are reflected in the community. So you know, that's why I personally invested the last 15 years in helping build the ecosystem and the community around AR and VR. And you know, we're seeing the fruits actually of this effort. It's happening. I think if you look at the achievements of this industry in the last decade, it's just tremendous. But there's still a lot of work to do, you know, to really bring it to every single person on earth, to and in a way that really benefits society and benefits every person. I think the standards is one of the key aspects of making this work. There's a few more things, you know, like how to create the right user experience, because you know, it's not something that we've been using in the last 40 years with 2D computing. We have to reinvent a lot of the experience and the interaction. So there's still a lot of work to do. That's why it's so exciting. And that's why I'm also so grateful for you, Ali, for bringing the Turkish community into the global community and really, you know, just trying to bring it to every corner of Earth and drive it to success. So thank you.
Thank you. Actually, we should do that to every part of the world, like you're saying. Jan-Erik.
Yeah. So obviously, I like to extend an invitation to anyone who would like to take the challenge. You know, be part of history. You can join any of the efforts, and especially for me, if you can join OpenAir Cloud, we are offering you the opportunity to work on the prototype of the future open spatial web at the city scale. And there are many angles to that, not only for developers. As Uri mentioned, it's for user experience design, it's for artists, It's for people who care about privacy and security. So please join us, go to our website and become a member, but also support any other initiative that aims towards those same goals as Open Air Cloud is working for. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, actually. I am looking at questions and I don't see much questions. Jetta, if I'm missing anything on the top side, please let me know. I don't see any questions right now, but I would like to ask one thing. Maybe this can get some answers on the chat. If at 6 p.m. in Turkey, was this a good time? Because this is the first of all Nite Istanbul, and we will be having more talks like this. So please write if you think 6 p.m. in Turkey is a good time. We can definitely do later, not earlier, to have California also included. So any after 6 p.m., 7 p.m., 8 p.m., please write that down. And I would like to make one more announcement about testbeds of Open Air Cloud. Anyone who's listening to us in Turkey or around the globe, we are looking for testbed contributors, testbed partners around the world to be able to test the open spatial computing platform. And along with, in the near future, for the open VPS that we will hopefully be getting up in the world, launching that in the world for the benefit of all, which will be free to utilize. And again, that would make Unchained the market of being as same distance to internet as it would be to the real world metaverse. So please contact us on openaircloud.org. And for final questions, if there are any, I don't see any, Jetta, right? No question. Oh, somebody's saying 6 p.m. is rush hour. Okay, I got that feedback earlier. So we can do later than that. Yeah, you can always email me about this, what time would be the best, and we can definitely organize it at a later time. Again, Neil, Ori, Jan-Erik, and thank you very much for this amazing panel. And Nadine just wrote to me on email. She had to go because her laptop died and she was unable to join through her phone. So she's saying everybody, hi to everybody. And again, please follow us and we will continue bringing Nite Istanbul in the near future.
Thank you, Ali. Thanks everybody for joining.
Thanks, Ali.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.